So how the heck do I afford to travel and live in an RV full time? It's a common question I've probably gotten hundreds of times over the years. So today I'm going to talk about my RV lifestyle and how I can afford it. So stay tuned.
There ain't nobody gonna do it for you. Got to find your own.
Hey friendlies, I'm Carolyn and welcome back to my life living in an RV. For 8 years, I have been living, working, and traveling full-time in my RV. And one of the questions I get asked the most is, how the heck do you afford such a lifestyle? So today I'm going to talk about 4 different elements that I believe are the building blocks of being able to afford living in an RV, at least for me. And number 1 is, I think one of the biggest disconnects when people who live in traditional lives try to imagine living in an RV and how to afford it. I think one of the biggest disconnects is that you're comparing your vacation to my life. This isn't a vacation, this is my life. And what do I mean by that? Well, when you think about going on an RV vacation, you still have all the expenses of your home behind, right? You still have your mortgage or your rent, your insurance, your maintenance, your utilities. You're still paying almost all of that, if not all of it, while you're on vacation. So typical Americans have to save up to go on vacation while they still pay their home costs. So you've got double the expense. Well, when you take away the home, that takes away a whole huge expense. So imagine for a minute if you didn't have that. Imagine the freedom to be able to live a different way. Here's what I want you to do right now. I want you to grab a pen and paper and turn off the video for a second and write down all of your expenses related to your home. Your rent, your mortgage, your maintenance, your utilities, your insurance, everything, maybe an HOA. I want you to write down all of your costs of just maintaining your home. And come back when you're done. Oh, wait. Okay, are you back? All right. How much is that? For some people, that number can be really big. A couple thousand, 5,000, 6,000, more. That's a lot of money, right? Imagine if you got rid of that home. Poof! What could you do with that much money every month? For me, that was the beginning of exploring RV life. When I looked at how much I was spending just on housing, and I was living in a tiny, tiny in-law apartment after my divorce, but I was still paying $2,000, maybe $2,500 a month, just for rent, utilities, insurance, all the other stuff that went into it. Maybe $2,000. It's been a long time. But I started thinking, oh my gosh, if I didn't have this, because I hiked 26 days on the John Muir Trail, and I still had all those expensive when I was doing really what I wanted to do. So just to give you an example so that you have a point of comparison, I'm going to go down some of my basic expenses of living in an RV. Again, this isn't going to be a budget video. I'll put a link in the video description below. I've done 2 budget videos already, giving you line item of what it costs, per category to live in an RV, and you can refer to those below. But I'm going to give you just an idea of the difference between my life and yours if you're static. Number 1, my insurance. So because my vehicle is my house, everything is combined. I have vehicle insurance, but it's also basically a homeowner's policy. It's full-timers insurance, and it covers all the things that you would expect a homeowner's policy to cover in addition to my vehicle coverage. And that's about $80 a month. My utilities, and that's dump stations and water and propane. I fill up my propane tank, which is about 11 gallons, about once a month in the summer, maybe every 3 weeks in the winter, depending on how much heat I use. Right now I am paying for dump station. I'm paying $7 every 2 weeks to dump my tanks. I don't have to pay for water, but I could get water there if I needed to. But depending on where you are in the country, oftentimes you can get dumped for free, but not always. So I'm estimating about $50 a month on average for utilities, and that's including the propane, which is about $30 probably to fill my tank, again, depending on where you are, plus dump fees and things like that. That can fluctuate, but that's a good good average. And then maintenance. Since my house is also my vehicle, my maintenance I'm averaging, or I like to budget about $200 a month for maintenance. That is not including my emergency fund. And I always recommend you have a healthy emergency fund, especially if you're living in an RV, because things can go wrong, and when they do, they are very expensive. A van maybe not so much, and I know a lot of people when I first started recommended an emergency fund of $5,000. I recommend $10,000. If you're going to be living in an RV, especially an older RV, I think you need $10,000, because even if you need a transmission, poof, $5,000 wouldn't even cover a transmission. I feel more comfortable having more than that. So you need a really good emergency fund. But on top of that, you need to budget for maintenance. So with the maintenance budget, my utilities, and my insurance, my hard costs every month of living in an RV is about $330. How does that compare to your number? That number that you just tallied up when I had you turn off the video, how does that $330 compare to yours? I would guess it's a lot lower. So imagine what you could do, the freedom you could have with all that extra money without the sticks and bricks. So I didn't include gas in this for a reason. So it costs me about $185 right now to fill my 52-gallon tank. And the reason I didn't include that as a hard cost is because if times are tough, you don't have to travel as much. There are certain parts of the country you can literally jump from camp to camp to camp within 50 miles maybe of each other, maybe less than that. So you don't even really need to travel. So that's a cost that you can control. The other ones you really can't control. Those are things that you're given. You need utilities, you need insurance. Those are things you can't control. But you can manage your gas. Travel as little or as much as your budget permits each month. 400 miles I get to the tank of gas. So if you are on a really tight budget, you can hang out in a part of the country where you only have to move 15 miles or to a new forest or to new public lands just down the road every 2 weeks, and a tank of gas could last you 2, maybe 3 months. But again, that's a cost that you can control depending on your budget. It's not just a solid something you have to pay every month. And that's why I think I included that separate. But think about that. What would you do with that money? That extra money, $300, whatever your cost is, minus $330, or even $430 if you want to include $100 in gas. That's a lot of money, right? That you could do a lot of different things with than pay for a home that's just sitting there doing nothing, empty, costing a lot of money when you're out doing what you really want to do. Of course, I boondock 99.9% of the time. That means my costs are extremely low because I don't pay for camping. If you want to have an RV life where you're staying in campgrounds, you're staying in RV parks, maybe you're traveling to national parks, you're going to need to factor that into your cost. Of course, it's going to be really high. If you plan on staying in an RV park every night, it may not be any cheaper than the life you're living now. And that's definitely something that you need to consider. This is how I afford my RV life and living my life the way I do. So if you are going to be traveling around public lands, that costs your rent, basically. Rent, I consider gas my rent most of the time. So take that, if you're going to do RV parks, take that into consideration. Your costs are going to be a little bit higher in RV life. The second aspect of being able to afford my RV life are my lifestyle choices. My old life was expensive. It was expensive. I had a gym membership. I had hair salons, mani-pedis on a regular basis, expensive makeup, and even anti-aging lotions. I had a personal trainer. I had a massage therapist. I went out for expensive dinners, and I went out for coffee every day. The clothes and the accessories were ridiculous. And I had an expensive car payment. And there were also costs like entertainment and vacations. So imagine if any of those or your own things that you have in your current life to maintain an image, or to maintain what society tells you you should do or look like in order to be a proper citizen in civilized society. Imagine if you didn't have to pay for any of that. Now, I'm not knocking anybody. If you live on the road and you still like your mani-pedis and you still like to go to a hair salon, more power to you. For me, it was liberating to not have to do any of that anymore. The life that I lived in some ways was very ego-driven. I thought it would make me somebody, to look a certain way, to present a certain image. For me, living in an RV is finding out who I really am without all the ego and, frankly, a lot of the baggage. What I chased as far as image was really about running from who I was. And it took me a long time and a lot of therapy. I still have therapy, by the way. That's one thing. It's one self-care thing. Self-care, that could be debated. Are mani-pedis self-care? Maybe, yeah, maybe, but not necessary self-care, optional self-care. But it took me a long time to realize that I was running away from myself by chasing an image of what I should look like, and also just feeling all my life, and a lot of women can relate to this, that it was my responsibility to be attractive to the male eye. And I don't have to worry about that anymore. It's so liberating. So my lifestyle living in an RV has been really about being closer to nature, and not just living in the woods, but being closer to my natural human Homo sapien mammal self. And that means sometimes my fingernails are dirty. Don't care. I don't care. Means my RV is not pristine. It's not always perfectly clean. It's beat up. But for me, these choices have allowed me to lead a simpler, more financially responsible life. I don't care about going to the hair salon. In fact, I cut my hair myself most of the time. I did get a proper haircut about 6 months ago for the first time in years. It means that my sink might be ugly as hell, but it works, so why replace it? My countertop is falling apart and it's ugly as hell, but who cares? It works. Why should I go out and spend money to make it look better and to make my audience feel better about looking at it? I choose not to. That's a choice, personal choice for me. I don't mind things looking a little old around me. It doesn't bother me. And so these lifestyle choices and really moving away, for me, this is just for me, I'm not speaking for anyone else, based on my experience, for me, moving away from ego toward a simpler, more authentic, more earthy life has freed up a lot of money. That allows me to live on less. I shouldn't say never. I hardly ever eat out anymore. If I'm going through a big city, I usually will look for a vegan restaurant and try to go out and have a nice vegan meal. But I don't know, maybe 6 times a year. Maybe I do that. I don't go out for coffee anymore. Even the first couple years I was on the road, whenever I went into town, one of my first stops was Starbucks or Pete's to get a nice coffee. I don't do that anymore. I don't have any entertainment expenses. I can't go to the movies. It's too loud for me. I'm more sensitive to noise and things like that than I used to. So my entertainment is packing up a backpack or a day pack and going for a hike to a waterfall, or just hiking in the woods, or hanging out with people. Going to Mexico, I guess that would count. But I don't have like the expensive vacations and the expensive entertainment things that I used to have either. So everything is just kind of simpler, more basic, more down to earth for me. And that saves me a lot of money. And the third aspect of being able to afford RV life is, of course, work. I am still of working age and I still work. When I first hit the road, I was a marketing consultant, and I decided to completely flip my business model. My business model while I was living in the San Francisco Bay Area was very much based on networking and who you know and rubbing elbows and getting referrals and things like that. And that was how I grew my business. Most of my clients came from who I knew, referrals. And I knew that when I hit the road, I wasn't going to be going to networking events and doing the active referral based business anymore. I was going to be doing project based, completely changing my business model. And I wasn't really sure how that was going to work. I was a little nervous about it, to be honest with you. But I knew that even if that didn't work, I could pick up extra work. I've bartended, I've waited tables, I could even clean toilets. I don't care. And then, of course, YouTube happened, and everything about my ideas for working less, living more, went out the window. I built a brand new business, and I'm still working, as many of you know, on a work-life balance. But work is a part of my life, and I am able to afford my RV life because I'm still working. But I don't have to work as much. I mean, it's a choice for me to work as much as I do, and I recognize that, but I don't need to work as much as I do. And that's one of the things that you can start maybe thinking about in a little differently, that if your living expenses are cut 50%, if they're cut in half, you don't have to work as much. So if you only need to earn a couple $1,000s a month, that's $500 a week. How easy, for a lot of us, how easy is it to earn $500 a week? Look at the skills you have. Look at the skills you had in the past. Maybe you just work a couple days a week, or maybe you just work 3 months a year. And that's what a lot of people do when they transition to RV life. They do seasonal work, they do Amazon, they do the beet harvest, they do work camping. So there are a million more options for earning when you don't have to earn $5,000, $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 a month. It really helps open up options for living the life you really want to live. And finally, I think this in some ways is the most important aspect of affording a new lifestyle, whether it's RV life or something else that's a little simpler than our traditional American dream life. And this is going to require you to get honest with yourself and start really being mindful about your spending and really discerning between want versus need. I need a new pair of shoes. Well, wait a minute. There's nothing wrong with the 40 pairs of shoes I already have. Or the 2 pairs of shoes I already have. They still work. The soles are fine. They're intact. Do I really need a new pair of shoes, or do I just want a new pair of shoes? I really need a new jacket. Well, I've got 3 in the closet already. Do I really need another jacket? Once you start getting in the habit of asking yourself, do I really need that, or do I just want it? It really opens up your mind to the consumerism that is a part of all of us as Americans. I mean, we're raised from day one to want bigger, better, newer, brighter, grander, more expensive stuff. That's just who we are as Americans, and we have to break that habit. And for me, I started breaking that habit when I came back from backpacking, a month-long backpacking trip, and said, I didn't need that in the 30 days I was gone. I didn't need that. I didn't need anything. Of everything in my apartment I didn't need. I survived without it for 30 days. And I started questioning everything. Like, why do I have all this crap I don't need? And it really got me to change my mindset around spending. I don't need a new purse. I don't need to dye my hair, to wear makeup. I don't need any of that. Of course, again, these are personal choices for me as far as the looks. We'll talk about that maybe later, but in another video. But if once you start training yourself, when you say, I need this, say, wait a minute, do I really want it? Do I really need it, or do I just want it? Once you get in the habit of training yourself, you really start seeing how discretionary, I don't know if that's the right word, discretionary, that might be the word, your spending really is. And that you're really spending your money on a lot of things you don't really need, that you just want. And why do you want them? Do you want that new pair of shoes more than you want to live in an RV? Do you want to keep dyeing your hair or getting those perms or those mani-pedis more than you want to live in an RV? Because once you start really analyzing the spending around all of those things, and you start saying, well, wait a minute, that's $50 I can put in my emergency fund. I'd rather have an emergency fund than pretty nails. These are the 4 biggest aspects of how I'm able to afford my RV life. Number 1, cutting my expenses by not having a stationary home anywhere, changing my lifestyle choices and really getting closer to earth for me, closer to nature, closer to my natural, authentic self instead of some made up version of what society tells me I should be. I don't have to be all that anymore. I don't care. It's been liberating to not care or to not try to chase an image of what society tells me I'm supposed to look at, and to stop chasing the male gaze. My whole life and a lot of my baggage, just a lot of who I was told me almost that it was my responsibility to look attractive. And it's been so liberating to not worry about that anymore. And then work, of course, you can work a lot less when your overhead is a lot lower. And then, of course, assessing your wants versus needs. So those of you who have transitioned to RV or van life, or who have just chosen a simpler life, maybe you're homesteading, or maybe you've just become more minimalist, what are some tips or tricks you have for people for saving money and start changing your mindset toward a simpler, less expensive life? Leave your suggestions and your tips below for everyone else to read. And you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go ahead and do a spreadsheet of all of my current RV life expenses updated for 2024. And I'm going to go ahead and post that to patrons and channel members. So if you want that, go ahead and join Patreon or click the join button below. I'll post it sometime this week, and it'll be an itemized detail of all of my current RV living expenses. And if you don't need the current ones, like I said, there are 2 free videos that you can check, and those links are in the video description below. All right, I appreciate everybody being here, and leave your thoughts below, and I will see you next Sunday. In the meantime, be happy, be free, and be kind. Bye.